Very few visitors get their first impression of the northwest Highlands of Scotland from a boat. Approaching from the southwest, you see that the immediate shoreline has a rocky, hummocky surface, and beyond, rising in the distance, are the shapes of massive mountains. It's a wild, almost desolate scene. Yet at the head of this sea loch, one of the many cutting deep into the northwest coast of Scotland, is the small settlement of Lochinver. Lochinver is 100 kilometres away from the nearest town of any size, Inverness to the southeast. Cape Wrath, at the northwest tip of Scotland, is 55 kilometres away. Ullapool, a small port and holiday resort, is 30 kilometres away to the south. From Inverness, access to Lochinver across land is only by road. There is no railway to this northwest corner of Scotland. Where the road reaches the sea at Lochinver, there's a line of cottages along the shore of Lochinver Bay. How does this village survive? Who travels to and from it? What's this village like? And how is it affected by the surrounding terrain? These are some of the questions we shall seek to answer as we explore the environment of this remote part of Scotland. The buildings of Lochinver are strung out like beads on a necklace, dotted along the coastline. Some are houses built by Sutherland County Council and rented to tenants who are either retired pensioners or people working in local jobs. Other tenanted houses are rented from the local laird and other owners. The needs of the local residents and the tourists are catered for by the few shops and a garage, and here are all the business premises and public buildings. The other buildings include privately owned houses. Bed and breakfast accommodation is offered to tourists in many of these different types of houses in the summer months. At the southern end of the village is a newly built harbour for fishing boats. A fleet of 50 to 60 boats, mainly seine netters, use this harbour. Before the new harbour was built, unemployment was a serious problem in Lochinver. So somebody took advantage of those sea lochs, which provide shelter for ships, and a scheme has been set up whereby these ships operate out of here. They fish the Minch, which is the water between the mainland and the Outer Hebrides. They bring the fish back in here, where there's shelter, and the fish is sold and bought in by one of the big companies. An interesting thing is that the fishermen don't live here. They live over on the east coast of Scotland. That's where their homes are. They come here at the beginning of the week. They live on the boats during the week while they're fishing, and then at the end of the week, they go back across the mountains to their homes on the east coast. This development has, at the same time, brought increased trade and prosperity to the community generally. But of course, for fishing to be a paying activity, the fish must be got to market quickly, and therefore of vital importance are the roads. Lochinver isn't served directly by the nearest main road, the one from Ullapool to Cape Wrath via Kylestrom, but there are 3 feeder roads. From the south, a very narrow road winds away from the main road. From the north, another narrow road links Lochinver with Kylestrom, where there's a ferry across the loch. And an improved road runs eastwards from Lochinver, also linking up with the main road north from Ullapool. Narrow, winding roads with their single tracks, steep inclines and sharp bends are typical of many roads in the Highlands of Scotland. Such roads are only for the use of cars and are quite unsuitable for lorries and coaches. Roads like this wind their way up and down the rocky hills and round the numerous lochs. As well as problems due to the type of terrain, there are other difficulties for the Highland motorist. On the northern route, we encountered this hazard, Highland cattle, who perhaps find the metalled, smooth surface of the road a relief from the rocky surfaces of the surrounding land. While these narrow roads might have been adequate when few motorists came to this part of Britain, the holiday boom, plus the developing economic prospects of settlements like Lochinver, have led to improvements. The road running east of Lochinver, for example, has been widened, levelled, and the surface improved. Better roads like this open up these areas to more and more tourists. Although much work has been done on the Highland roads, there are still bottlenecks to overcome. A striking feature of this area is the patchwork of numerous lakes and small lochans, which clearly have created road building difficulties. At the coast, long inlets present further problems. These inlets, or sea lochs, are described by geographers by their Scandinavian name, fjords. They're deep, steep-sided, and narrow. Following the eastern road out of Lochinver, and then turning north along the main road from Ullapool, we come to the Kyle ferry, which transports road vehicles across the sea loch. Unlike on other Scottish ferries, the motorist has a free service on the Kyle ferry. From 9 in the morning till 9 in the evenings or until dusk in the winter, this ferry operates a continual service. Many are the holiday motorists delayed by queues at this point who have longed to see a bridge built across this narrow neck. Yet the cost of a bridge might not be worthwhile when the bridge would only be heavily used in a relatively short period during the year. Well, why do the tourists come? What are the special attractions of the northwest of Scotland? Undoubtedly, the beauty of the sea lochs and especially the magnificence of the mountains act like magnets. This area of the northwest, skirted by the single-track roads to north and south and the main road on the east, is dominated by several isolated mountains. This map of the area shows the location of the major peaks. To the north is Cynniag, and to the south are Stack Polly and Culbeg, and in the middle the three peaks of Sullivan, Canisp and Culmore. Let's have a look at them. The mountains behind me are three of the most famous in the northwest Highlands of Scotland. They are Culmore, and then further to the right, the Sugarloaf Mountain of Sullivan, which can be seen sticking up above Lochinver, and then this way, Canisp. This is Culbeg in the south. Also in the south, but west of Culbeg, is Stack Polly with its very distinctive skyline. And this is Cynniag to the north. Although the heights of these mountains are not particularly impressive, the highest peak in the area, Culmore, is only 850 metres. As landscape features, they are striking. They share the same geological structures. Cynniag illustrates this. The bulk of the mountain is formed from a thick layer of Torridonian sandstone. Here, the layer is about 600 metres thick, an enormous deposit laid down in Precambrian times about 800 million years ago. Above it, on the highest peaks, is Cambrian quartzite, which was formed about 600 million years ago. This quartzite forms the mountain cap. The sandstone is more resistant to weathering than the quartzite. Notice the effects of weathering here on the east flank of Cynniag. Here, massive screes fall from the bare rock at the greater altitudes. Much of this weathering has been produced by frost shattering and freeze-thaw activity. When moisture, which is collected in cracks like these in the rock face, freezes, the ice has greater volume than the original water because water expands on freezing, putting pressure on the surrounding rocks, which causes pieces to break away and they fall, forming landslides. The impact of this weathering process can be clearly seen on the summit of Stack Polly. Here, the quartzite cap has been completely removed. The effect of weathering on the sandstone has been the formation of sharp pinnacles appearing like turrets on the skyline. The scree begins almost at the summit, and this clearly protects the rock beneath from weathering and erosion. Only the exposed rock is being worn away. Not surprisingly, on these mountains, there is an absence of dense vegetation. Thick plant cover isn't possible on bare rock and unstable scree, and in this northern part of Britain, winters are long and summers are short, so there's a short growing season for plants, which restricts the varieties which can survive. Altitude, shelter, and the direction which slopes face with regard to the sun are other factors affecting vegetation. Variations in soil depth and in the type of soil also influence plant growth. The soils vary in the structure of their grains, in the chemical elements they contain, especially how acidic they are, and in their water-holding capacity. Swampy areas cover many valley floors, and at higher altitudes, thick layers of sticky peat occur. Compare this with the bare rocks on the top of Stack Polly. There are also interesting differences between the mountains and the platform on which they're located. The most obvious differences are seen from the air. Craggy summits and banks of scree are replaced by a rolling, low-level, hummocky surface with rounded nodules divided by hollows, many of which contain small lakes, lochans as they're known here. This landscape is called a fossil landscape. You normally think of a fossil as something you dig up out of the ground that's been buried thousands, maybe millions of years. A skeleton, a shell, maybe an impression in a rock. Well, I am standing on a fossil landscape. You see, this rock, it's a rather nice rock with the rather nice name of gneiss, G-N-E-I-S-S. This rock is about 2,500 million years old. And a long time after it was formed, it was covered by an immense layer of red sandstone. And in the passage of time, that red sandstone has been worn away, revealing the rock again, a fossil landscape. As the sandstone has been removed by erosion, by wind, water, and ice, so more and more of the gneiss has been exposed. This gneiss, it's called Lewisian gneiss, is an extremely hard, resistant rock, and the rounded hummocky surface has been produced principally by the movement of glaciers flowing over it. Just as the mountains are not suitable for dense plant growth, so is the gneiss plateau a difficult terrain. The gneiss weathers into slightly acidic, infertile soil. Much of the rock is left bare without any plants. But where there are more sheltered areas, as on the flanks of Loch Lurgan, just to the south of Stack Polly, there is plant life. Here, orchids are found. And there are drifts of cotton grass. The impression we have then is a lichen-strewn platform running inland from the sea, on which are dotted peaks which rise steeply from the platform. One moves from Lewisian gneiss via Torridonian sandstone to Cambrian quartzites. Agriculturally useless, much of this area is a part of the Inverpolly National Nature Reserve, seen on this map as the darker area south of Loch Inver. Although privately owned, there are 3 estates within the reserve, it's possible for visitors to enter it, though permission must be sought for entry to some parts at all times, and for the whole of the reserve during the deer stalking season. In the reserve, birds, wildlife and plants are the main attractions. Deer are frequently seen, but the wildcat, pine marten and golden eagle only rarely. The greater part of this reserve is described as deer forest, something of a misnomer since trees are not the dominant vegetation in the region. Indeed, heather, moorgrass and deer grass are far more typical. The vegetation is inadequate for profitable sheep farming. There's insufficient winter grazing. The terrain is difficult for shepherds to cover, especially given the number of lochans and the extent of the screes, and even very large acreages would not have sufficient good fodder for large flocks of sheep. Conservationists, anxious to protect wildlife and to retain rare species of plant and bird life, would argue that Inverpolly should be kept as it is. For some, even the improved roads are regarded as a threat, since they will bring more and more visitors, and with them will come litter, pollution by car fumes, danger of fire, and sometimes damage to the very features they come to see, often out of ignorance of the life of this terrain. And these fears are felt by some for this whole area of the Northwest Highlands. For the visitors, villages like Loch Inver are important since they have holiday accommodation and provide basic services and homes for the people who work in the area. Communities like Loch Inver have been threatened in recent years by the search for sites for oil rig building and other ventures connected with the rush to bring oil ashore from the North Sea oil fields. Arguments over these developments have been long and bitter. It's difficult trying to imagine what kind of commercial developments could ruin the gneiss and sandstone scenery in these mountains of the northwest. But for a community like Loch Inver, some changes, such as the fishing fleet, cause relatively little social disruption. Other developments, however, could be disastrous.